Specifically, our session on the commission transitioning to EDI Release 3.1. First start with introduction. So my name is Stephanie Sweeney, and I'm the manager of the Commission's EDI Quality Assurance Department. And with me, I have Candace Gray. She is the supervisor of our compliance team in the EDI department, and Carolyn Gonzalez. She is the supervisor of our technical team, also within the EDI department. And I also wanted to take a moment to introduce you all to our training team. The individuals on our training team are going to be starting to provide the training for 3.1 probably later in 2024, but any training that we give currently on Release 3.0, these are the individuals that do that training for our department. So we have Elizabeth Patrick. She's actually not with us today, but she is our EDI senior analyst. She's been with us for quite some time and has a lot of experience with our EDI program. Then we also have Crystal Pruitt. She is our EDI technical analyst. And we have Mona Kanikar. She is our EDI compliance analyst. And then lastly, we have Kanaret Cologne, but she is also not with us at the moment. But those are the members of our training team. And if you guys need any training, whether it's based on the current release or 3.1, we encourage you to reach out to us. We can do in-person training if you're local to this area, or we can do WebEx. We can do company-specific training, so we can tailor our presentations to meet the needs of your organization, or we can do broad training. So if we're getting requests from multiple organizations that have a similar need for the same subject, then we can do a training that will cross multiple organizations. So we encourage you to reach out to us for any training needs, and we're happy to provide that to you. So this is the big date. January 16th, 2025 will be the date that we flip the switch and we move from Release 3.0 to Release 3.1. The last day that we will accept Release 3.0 transactions is going to be January 15th, 2025, and then you will begin submitting Release 3.1 on January 16th. So definitely keep that date in mind. Okay, so our agenda for today, we're going to cover a little bit about our history, just a quick overview of the history of our EDI program. We're going to talk about what's new in Release 3.1, specific for Virginia. We are going to go over the new MTCs and some changes to existing MTCs. We're going to talk about new data elements and codes that we're going to be accepting in Release 3.1, talk about what's coming next, and then we'll leave some time for questions. You can, if we have ample time available, you're welcome to ask questions about current situations or about 3.1. We'll be happy to answer anything that you have related to our EDI program. So let's talk a little bit about the history of EDI. So the Commission is currently on Release 3.0. We implemented the IABC's standard for workers' compensation electronic reporting. We implemented that effective October 1st, 2008. We had a phased-in approach at that time, and we phased in the implementation based on filing volume beginning in October, with our last group of claim administrators coming in March of 2009, with a full mandate on July 1st of that year. Reg 16 VAC 309120 is what gives us the authority to require EDI reporting for the workers' compensation claims. That is the statute that states that your injuries must be reported according to our implementation guide that we have published. And then Section 902 of our Act is what allows us to enforce compliance with those requirements. So any of, when we ask for transactions to be filed or say that you are not in compliance, it is according to Section 902 of our Act. And then in July of 2012, we had what we call an all-accident mandate. Basically, what that meant is that all accidents, regardless of the date of injury, had to be reported if they were still open and active, and that was as of July 1st of 2012. When we originally went live with EDI in 2008, it was only for injuries as of that date and forward, and then in 2012, we backed it up to all active dates of injury must be reported EDI. All right.
So now we're going to look at what's new for Virginia with 3.1. Can you all hear me all the way in the back? Okay, good. So, for 3.1, we have redefined 4 MTCs. As you can see up there on the list, we have 5 new SHOIs that are being added, 14 data elements that we accepted in 3.0 will no longer be accepted when we move to 3.1. There are going to be 7 added data elements that we didn't previously take that we're going to be taking. We move over. The IABC added 44 new ones, right? But we'll only be adding 25 of those new DNs, and we're going to look at those as we go through the slides today. And then there are a few new codes that were added to some of the data elements in 3.1 that we're going to be that we're currently accepted in 3.0 that we're going to be taking. And we're going to be using XML. So we're going to be talking about XML because we're switching from flat file to XML, right?
Yes, so when we move to 3.1, you will have the option to send either flat file or XML depending upon what your organization prefers. We're not going to mandate XML at this point, but we will be allowing XML to be submitted instead of flat file as of that date. And then in the coming slides is when we're going to go over more detail about all the new DNs and what changes are specifically coming.
Okay. All right, so here are some of the MTCs that are going to be updated or coming up for 3.1. Over there you see the MTCs with changes, the FROIs and the SHROIs, and then the new MTCs that are being added in 3.1. And that regulation down there at the bottom is what gives us, like Stephanie mentioned earlier, it's one of the regulations that give us the authority to request the data that's submitted on these transactions.
Okay, so we're going to start off with the UR. So as many of you probably know, in Release 3.0, if you are reporting to the Commission a minor injury, you can use a FROI UR to report that information to the Commission. It requires a reduced data set, meaning you don't have to provide us everything that you would have to give us if you filed a 0-0 transaction. You can file a FROI UR, give us limited data for those minor injuries. In Release 3.1, the FROI UR will no longer be used for minor injuries. So if you have a minor injury that you are going to report to the Commission, those must all be reported, all injuries, regardless if they're minor or major, must be reported on a FROI 0-0 transaction. And then you will provide us with the injury severity code that will then determine what data is required. So it's in today's world, if you file a FROI UR, you would give us an injury severity code of minor, and then you would file less data. In Release 3.1, when you file the FROI 0-0 and you use injury severity code for minor, then again, you can still give us the reduced data. But if you file with an injury severity code for major, you're going to have to give us everything. So that's the biggest change with the UR coming with 3.1, is that the minor injuries can no longer be reported for that. What we will be using the UR for is essentially catching up, transitioning you all from Release 3 to Release 3.1. So when we go live in January 2025, in order for you to begin submitting using the EDI requirements, you have to file a FROI UR first for any existing JCNs that have been reported via EDI. The FROI UR will come in, that will essentially reset the claim. It will give us a picture of everything. It will transition you from Release 3 to 3.1, and then from that point forward, you would then be able to file your other transactions. But the FROI UR is going to be what is required when we transition. The FROI UR is going to be required on all injuries that are open and active currently, or that have been open or active within the last 5 years. This will be effective for all claims that become active after our go-live date, which again is January 16th, 2025. And the only exception that we will have for the filing of the FROI UR is on injuries that where the only thing that was reported in Release 3 was a UR. If the only thing filed in Release 3 was the FROI UR to report it was a minor, it never transitioned to a major, so no other EDI filings were made, then for those, you do not have to file your FROI UR. You can go straight to filing your FROI 0-0 at that. Injuries that were minor, you would only need to file EDI in 3.1 should it transition from a minor injury to a major injury. Yes?
I just want to make sure I understood what you said.
Sure.
So in January of 2025, any open and active claim that we currently have, we need to send you a FROI UR
That is correct.
on all.
That is correct.
including settled cases?
If it's open and active.
If it's an open and active claim, or if it's been open or active within the last 5 years.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so our legacy doesn't go back 5 years? We're just a 3-year history? So if we have full and final settlements, do you also want a 4 AUR?
So that is currently our requirements, but that is definitely something we can take back and talk a little bit more about and figure out if we want to do that on the full and final cases. The way our system is currently designed, we don't have a way to clearly tell if it's been settled fully or not without actually going into the paper documentation and looking at the settlement order. So we'll have to take that back and see if we can have a further conversation and figure that out. Sure. And all of these questions, just so you know, we're documenting them, and we are going to be creating like a FAQ that we're going to publish at a later date. And then if we are going to make changes to this 5 years for something like full and final settlement, we'll send out an email to the full listserv so that you guys can have that information.
Yeah.
Sure.
And if you're not already on the listserv and you want to know how to get on it, just let one of us know and we'll help you. Oh, good.
Okay,
I
great.
thought so.
Great. So I know that the UR can be a little bit confusing, so if you have any questions, just let us know. But the UR has to be filed in order to allow you to then transition and file 3.1. Okay, the next transaction that's changing slightly is the cancellation. We're still going to accept the FROYO 1 cancellation transaction. However, this transaction will now contain additional information that it doesn't today. So in Release 3.1, the IIBC added a couple more fields to allow us to get more information. The first field that's going to be added is going to be the cancel reason code. So the IIBC has a set of codes to tell us the reason for the cancellation. The only reason for cancellation in the state of Virginia is if it's a duplicate claim or if it was reported to the state in error. So if it's a West Virginia claim and it was reported to Virginia by mistake. So those are the only two codes that we are going to allow in Release 3.1 is going to be D for a duplicate claim, and it's going to be J for wrong jurisdiction or a change of jurisdiction. This will, again, allow us to know right up front the reason for the cancellation.
What if it was reported to the wrong carrier?
So if you filed, if you filed EDI as the claim administrator and then later determined that you're not the claim administrator, so we don't want an 01 on those because what we would do is get the correct claim administrator to then acquire the claim from you guys. So you would just need to notify us in writing, just like you would today, that the claim does not belong to you guys. And if you happen to know who it does belong to, that would be great if you could tell us that. Sometimes we're able to figure it out, sometimes we're not. But in order for us to get it removed from your organization, we need to know who the correct one is, and then we can send out the request to get the acquisition filed with us. So we are also going to get on the cancellation a cancel reason narrative. So this is basically just a narrative field, a free-form text field where you can type out what you need to tell us about the cancellation. So for instance, if it's wrong jurisdiction, you can type in there, this was reported to Virginia in error, it belongs in West Virginia. And then we have all the information that we need to have on file so that we can proceed with either consolidating them together or whatever our next steps would be. Or in cases of duplicates or deactivating them in our system. We are also going to get another new data element, and it's called a jurisdiction claim number related. So these are in cases where there are true duplicates. If we have two JCNs that exist for the same injury, today we would just get a letter or something, somehow we would be notified that there are two injuries or two JCNs for the same injury. It goes to Carolyn's team, they review it, they consolidate it. If you all happen to know about that and we've already discussed it, you know to file your cancellation. When you file your cancellation, you can add that duplicate JCN number into the jurisdiction claim number related field and provide that data to us as well. So then we have documented not only your reason for cancellation, but the related jurisdiction claim number if there is one for that scenario. So the next one for the FROYs that's changing slightly is the AQ and the AU. So these are your acquisition transactions. We have a scenario today or a situation today where if you are acquiring the claim and the prior claim administrator was paying indemnity benefits, but they never suspended it, there is no way for you as the new claim administrator to go in and suspend that claim because you haven't made any payments. So as far as the commission is concerned, we have an open indemnity claim sitting with us. So when that happens, when you file your acquisition transaction with us, and we show that there is currently an open claim, open indemnity benefits, we will return a code on the acknowledgement record, and it's going to be code B, and that tells you that a SROI is due. And that SROI can either be an AP to show that you have started making payments for indemnity, a PY to show that you are making medical payments, or it can be an AC. An AC is a new SROI MTC that we're going to go over shortly, but the AC transaction basically lets us know that benefits were suspended, but the prior claim administrator did. Open indemnity showing based on the last code B to tell you all that you need to file a SROI.
Oh, this,
I can do this one.
no,
if
this
you'd
is
like.
you.
Yeah.
This is 100% you.
Okay. Okay, so this one, I will tell you from right off the bat, this is the most confusing change with Release 3.1. It's been confusing for my team as we are trying to get used to all the changes with 3.1. This has been the most confusing one, and this is around the O2 change. The biggest thing is that we will now be taking a SROI O2. So we are, I shouldn't say biggest because that's definitely not the biggest, but we are going to be taking a SROI O2 and a SROI O2. So you'll be able to report your SROI changes as well through a change transaction. The biggest change with the O2 is going to be a new segment that's going to be included on your transactions. This is going to be called the change segment. The change segment will be used for you guys to tell us specifically which data element, which piece of data is changing on your transaction. So right now, when you file an O2 with us, you give us all the data, and we have no idea why you're sending it, what's changed. What we do in our system is we do a full comparison. We look at what you're filing now, what you filed before, so that we can identify what specifically changed. But in addition to that, we just simply overlay all of the data. This has been an issue, I'm sure some of you have experienced this. This has been an issue specifically with claimant addresses, where you're filing an O2 to update something else, but in that O2 transaction, the claimant's old address was listed, and then because we just overlay everything, we then update the claimant's address back to his old address, even though that's not what you were intending to change. That is not going to happen in Release 3.1. In Release 3.1, the only thing that we're going to look at is the change segment. So whatever data you put in a change segment that you are telling us you are changing is going to be the only data that we are going to overlay in our system. Everything else is going to be ignored. So if you intended to change that claimant address, but you didn't put that data element in the change segment, we're going to ignore it. That claimant address will not be updated. So it's very important that whatever you are intending to change on that transaction is included in the change segment. And that's going to be for both the FROI and the SROI. One of the other things that's changing with changes in general is going to be the fact that we are going to be allowing some changes to come through on subsequent transactions, meaning you will not have to file an O2 for all of your changes. There's certain data elements that we will require an O2 for, important things like the claimant's name, even address information, things that we have to have. We immediately, when the change is made, you're going to be required to file an O2. But if it's changes that we don't need to have right away, that can wait until a subsequent filing is made, you'll be able to file that change on a subsequent transaction, whether it would be a FROI or a SROI. So that, I think, is going to be a benefit so that you don't have to go in and manually trigger your O2s if it's something that can wait until a later transaction.
Unless we request it.
That is correct, unless we request it. So if we send out a request, one of our data correction letters, and we send it out and we ask for you all to file a specific change with us, if you don't have a subsequent transaction that's due at that time, then you would have to file the O2 or be subject to falling out of compliance and potentially getting a fine. Yes.
So right now, we can only make one change to a major thing on one 402. Will that change where we can do two?
It depends. There's still some data that can only be changed. For example, if it's match data, like you can't go in and change the claimant's first name, last name, date of injury all at the same time. So there's going to be certain match data that cannot be changed together, but then the rest of it, you can make more than one change at a time. Yes.
Hey, it's my turn. All right, okay, so now we're gonna kind of break down all of the SHROIs that we have to expect in 3.1. So we're gonna start with the SHROI AB. This is brand new to Virginia, comes from the 3.1 version. Essentially what this is today, in Virginia, you can only pay two specific indemnity benefits concurrently. The only two that can be paid concurrent are temporary partial and permanent partial. If for some reason you found yourself in a position today to do that, you could only do that if benefits had already started for that one benefit type on an event transaction like an IP and RB. Then you'd have to file a QT and essentially to add that new benefit type code on there. This is going to replace that. This will actually also work to prevent you from being able to just arbitrarily add benefits on a SHROI QT as well. So if you are, for example, let's say that you're already paying temporary partial, but claimant was awarded a period of compensation, loss of use for a body part, let's just say their arm, and you needed to go ahead and report that you started those payments, you would file a SHROI AB in order to add that benefit type alongside the temporary partial already being paid. The only, and I already said it, but the only benefits that can be paid concurrently in Virginia are temporary partial and permanent partial. If you attempt to file, say, temporary total and temporary partial using AB, we're gonna have it set as an edit to reject that. So, go to the.
So I just wanted to make a comment that when we started looking at Release 3.1, we went through and decided that we were going to do a whole, like a look at the whole picture, like everything that we currently take in Release 3, and once again, try to decide, do we need to take this, do we not? Basically, the same approach that we did when we first went with EDI in 2008. And some of the feedback that we've gotten, actually a lot of the feedback that we've gotten over the recent years is that our claim administrators don't like the fact that they have to do EDI in addition to agreement forms because the exact same data is being reported on both of those. For those of you who are new, and you might not know this, when we originally did EDI and were proposing to go to EDI, and back in 2006 and 2007, we wanted to get rid of the paper agreement forms and just use the EDI data for the award processes. But based on some feedback that we received, we couldn't do that. And we had to basically regroup, turn that process off, and now still have the paper agreement forms. And then that's what caused the 20-day order payments made to start being triggered from the report of the payments. So we've gotten a lot of feedback. They don't like to do the agreement forms plus the EDI. So what we did when we looked at 3.1 is we went through and we looked at it as, well, if we ever want to revisit this and get to the point where we can turn off paper agreement forms, we need to make sure we have everything that we need through EDI in order to do that. Because the commissioners wouldn't even want to begin making, considering doing this if we didn't have the data that we needed. So by taking something like the AB, it is going to allow us to get the data that we need in order to eventually revisit the topic of turning off paper agreement forms. Now, I'm not saying that we're definitely doing that, so please don't leave here thinking that we're doing that for sure. Just know that we've heard the feedback from our claim administrators. We've definitely taken this into consideration. When I presented the changes coming with 3.1 to the full commission, I explained to them exactly the same thing I'm telling you today. This is the reason why we are taking some of this stuff. So everybody knows that that's why we're doing it, to hope at some point maybe before I retire, we can do this. I know that it would be a huge benefit to a lot of our claim administrators, and it's definitely a goal of mine to get us to that point. So that you will see things like the AB where you're thinking, oh, well, today I could have just done that on a QT. Why do you have to implement a brand new MTC? This is why. Because if we were to use EDI for awards, we have to have some of the specific information that we can't get today on a QT transaction. So just wanted to throw that out there.
All right, so here is another one, and Stephanie touched on it a little bit earlier, but we're gonna kind of break it down a little bit more. Again, this is new to us, the Troy AC, as Stephanie explained earlier. This is going to essentially work as your means of being able to show that indemnity stopped once you took over that claim. And you yourself have never made any payments, so this is your way of telling us that electronically. You would obviously need to file the 4AQ first. It will reject for sequencing if you fail to do that. But we, like she said earlier, we have timers set in our system that once indemnity is showing as ongoing from one of the many event transactions that are submitted today, once that timer goes off, if you have not yet filed the AC following your acquisition, we're going to still send out those letters, requests for subsequent Troy. This transaction type is going to be one of the, today you can only submit in writing, I've not paid anything since I've acquired the claim. This is going to be that EDI compliance that we're looking for. And as she said earlier, the three types of transactions you could file would be AP, PY, or AC. So one shows paying indemnity, one shows paying medical, one shows you paid nothing at all. Let's see here. Acquired claim, last known indemnity through date will be required on this transaction. So that essentially is going to be you providing us what you knew to be the last date of indemnity payment when you took over that file.
Yes, and this
Anything
again
you
is,
wanna add?
this is just gonna cut down, it's gonna be another transaction, but it's going to cut down on the amount of paper that you guys are required to file for us. This will be, the means for you guys to just report that electronically, through an EDI transaction, as opposed to the letters, that you guys send today and we
Yeah.
have to scan in and kick off tasks and work. Now we won't have to do that because we'll have the transactions.
And if I'm being honest, I mean, I've heard from a lot of our customers in the past that you wish that there was something that you could file for this sort of thing, so you didn't have to submit a fax or something, because obviously we can't take it by email, so you've got to fax it, you got to mail it, you got to show up at the doorstep, whatever the means is to get that on the file to show it. This is going to give you that electronic filing option that we didn't have before. I'm actually pretty excited about it, so yay. All right, so Troy CA, again, another new benefit type code that we're going to be taking. The purpose of this one is, this is when you as a claim administrator have identified that the gross weekly amount for that particular benefit type has changed due to the claimant's earnings while on temporary partial. As we know, that gross income can change while they're out, whether it be light duty or whatever the reason for that change in compensation. So this is going to be the transaction type that you have available to you to be able to report that to us.
And again, this is just another one that would take the place of a paper form, essentially.
All right, so the Troy narrative, another one of my favorites. Today, if you have a medical-only claim and we send you out the request for EDI Troy letter, and you've not reached that threshold of $1,000 paid since the date that was awarded, or that benefit type was awarded, today you have to fill out a form and send it back to us saying, you check the box, you sign it, you put the date on it, and it says, I have not currently met that medical threshold. This is going to be the transaction type that you can submit that on. It is a free-form Troy transaction type. It's used by you to communicate to us something very specific. This is going to be for EDI requests only. So you're not going to use it for, say, responding to, give me an example.
20-day order.
A 20-day order. You're going to use it for things that are very specific to an EDI request. A good example I thought of the other day when we were discussing this is when you don't have an updated address for the employer and you get the undeliverable employer address notification, you can simply submit this, the Troy NT, and freeform, let us know we have no updated address for the employer. That'll satisfy it as well.
Will it work for,
Oh.
say, an employee, you send us a request to change the employee address, but say it's a PO box. We're sending claims to a PO box.
Uh-huh.
And the employee says, no, I don't want it to go to my mailing, I need it to go to my PO box. Is this something I can use to send to you to say, hey,
I think in that situation, you're gonna send us a FROIO2 to give us whatever address they choose to have their mail sent to.
sending to the PO box? And you're asking me to change the address to a physical address.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Yes, I see what you're saying. So you're disputing and you're letting us know, we've already filed the FROIO2. The address we're providing to you is what the claimant has requested. Yes, that would be
Yes.
perfect.
And then what's
Yep.
going to happen is these are just going to, every time you file an NT transaction with us, it's just going to kick off a task to a member of my team, and they're going to review it just like they would a fax or a letter that you mail in today. It's just, it's going to serve for the same purpose, but it'll allow you to do it through EDI, again, to eliminate the paper part of this.
All right, next. All right, so the suspension and the partial suspensions are changing a bit. Currently today, you have a number of codes that you would submit to report the type of suspension, or the reason for suspension, rather. What would have been, say, an S1 to submit will now change to suspension, and it will be an additional data element in there that you have to submit on that Troy SX, which is called the suspension reason code. And it essentially will be, I think it's pretty much the same. It mirrors what we have today. It's just your overall MTC is going to be SX or PX. So it's, the breakdown of that is gonna be under the new DN segment.
So instead of having like 15 different MTCs to choose from, you have one MTC.
Right.
That's it for a full suspension, one MTC for a partial suspension, and then you just give us a code to tell us the reason for your suspension.
Yep. So, on to the next. All right.
Do you want me to take this?
What?
Do you want me to take
I
this?
do, absolutely.
So, so this is the Shroy UR, and it's gonna work very similar to the Froy UR. So today, when a Shroy UR is used to catch up claims with a date of injury prior to October 1st, 2008. We don't see this a lot today because we're way past our all accident mandate. But when we switched to the all accident mandate in 2012, the Shroy UR was used to catch up that claim, to report to us all payments made to date in the legacy world, and then you would just proceed with your normal processing from that point forward. In Release 3.1, the Shroy UR is essentially going to do the exact same thing, except that it will be, just like the Froy UR, will be required on all EDI on all claims that it have had EDI reported in order to get you to transition from Release 3 to 3.1. So, let's say you had a claim that exists today, and you filed your Froy OO, and you filed Shroy IP, the QT, just several transactions. So on January 16th, or shortly thereafter, you would file your Froy UR. When that gets accepted, you would then file your Shroy UR, and then when that gets accepted, then you can proceed with your normal processing according to the requirements for 3.1. So you must file the Froy UR and the Shroy UR to transition that claim into the 3.1 world. It has the same requirements, and we'll look into it for the full and final settlements, but the same requirements, all currently active claims that have been active within the last 5 years, but anything that becomes active after our go-live date would require the UR had you made indemnity payments and submitted Troys prior to the transition in January 2025. Yes.
Is there a time frame to get all this license?
So, we haven't set a specific dates around that yet.
You're gonna be generous?
Yes. So what we don't want you guys to come in on day one and file thousands of UR transactions. That's just gonna overload everybody's system. So we don't want you to do that. What we have talked about is definitely giving like months to get everything filed in with us. But what I will say, regardless of whatever dates that we set, and that's definitely something we need to still work on and finalize our expectations around that. What I will say, though, is if something is due, like if we need something, we send you a request for something, you need to go ahead and catch that claim up right then, because you're still subject to compliance efforts if you don't do that. But we are definitely looking into that. It's been a concern of our IS department, our PMO department, about the volume. So
Ours too.
Yeah, so
I mean-
no, I'm not expecting you guys to come in on January 16th and file thousands and thousands of Shore UR transactions. So it's definitely something that we have to think about and try to look at timing and how long we're going to allow that to be filed, so.
So you're talking about your legacy migration, so what if, are you expecting a fully sure you are on lanes that have say they have a QT coming up, or I need to report an IP or a suspension?
Yes, because you will not be able to file anything in 3.1 unless you file that UR.
Right, so you're wanting us to wait to file until the next applicable transaction comes due, then file a for your sure you are to catch it up?
No, like you can, you don't have to wait. So we have some claim administrators that will probably come in within the first week or two and just file them. Yes, yeah, no, you are welcome to do that.
No, you're-
Yes, no, you can definitely do that. Yeah,
Yeah.
yes.
We report our, record-only claims as 400s. So do we need to report those through the short URs if nothing else has been filed on them?
You would only have to do that should it become a major injury. Then you would have to file your 4UR because you wouldn't be able to file anything else until you've filed that. Yeah. And I know that seems like a lot. It's a lot of, it's 2 additional transactions that you think probably are really unnecessary, but it's a requirement through the standard, not a Virginia-specific requirement. So it was implemented as part of the standard in order to allow us to change our requirements, change our edits to be specific to 3.1 and not to 3.0 like we already have programmed into our system, so.
Okay, can you back up on that? So
Sure.
we, on our minor claims, we don't file them in 3.0 as a for you are.
Mm-hmm.
We have been sending them as a.
An 00.
00 with the injury severity as M.
Yes.
You're not expecting a for you are on those cases?
If nothing else is becoming due, it hasn't transitioned into a major injury, then there would be nothing else for you to file until it does become major, so you wouldn't need to file your UR. Are you saying even the ones that have been active in the last, I'm assuming it's not currently active, because if it was currently active, then it's probably transitioned to a major injury at this point.
Let's just say that it's a medical-only claim, minor injury, less than $1,000 in the medical threshold, but I've reported it as an M, as an 00 with the minor injury code.
Right, so it's not,
I would, in typical history, we have transitioned from 3.0 to 3.1, filed it for you are with our legacy migration, no matter what the injury severity code is.
and you can still do that.
And we can still do that.
Yes, you can.
Okay.
Yes,
I just wanted to clarify.
yes. Any other questions around the UR before we move on? Okay. So next, we're going to move into talking about changes with our, the specific data that's required and all of the codes.
Oh, I'm up. Okay, let's go. All right, so in 3.1, we will no longer accept certain DNs, and you'll see in this list, that's all of the claim admin data. And that's because we get all that information from the trading partner documents that come in, that we get.
We just ignore that today,
We can
so it's
just-
like,
yeah.
why do we even take it today? So we're not going to take it in
So
the
we're not gonna
future.
take it in the future.
I mean, we just ignore it.
The only thing we
Sorry.
pull from is the claim admin fin.
Yeah,
So,
Yep.
oh, good.
yeah.
You looked really heartbroken. I was
I know.
worried.
So we don't need it, so we're not gonna request it. Also, you have here some date, fields, like initial date, current date, things like that. So during our review, when we were looking at these fields and seeing what we could use and what we might be able to lose, we determined that, these fields aren't necessary in Virginia for us to do business. So we're going to, eliminate those as well.
And they actually cause a lot of confusion, not just
Right.
with you guys, but with our team as well. Like, we get a lot of questions specifically around current date disability, current date, last day work. We get a lot of questions around that. So it's like, we don't
Literally the
even,
worst
we don't-
written
yeah.
names ever.
right, we don't use the data, so, no, we don't use the data. And even when we move in, and, I know, yeah. But even when if we were to transition into using the EDI stuff for award purposes, this isn't even data we would need for that, because we're just really interested in the period of disability. Like, we don't, and we're gonna get, the current date disability began is essentially the benefit period start date. So we're getting it already in some other field that's required, so why do we need
Right.
this information? So,
Right.
This is me.
Is it you?
It is.
What? That's all I had.
I know.
I'm gonna
I mean,
step
you
back.
can have it if
No,
you
no,
want
go
it.
for it.
All right. So these are from 3.0 that we did not take, that we're going to when we transition. Reduced benefit amount code. So there are 3 of the several that they do have in the standard, but these are the only 3 that we are going to be taking. We're going to be taking S to show claims settled under another date of injury. I think that some of you might be excited about that, and I'll give you the example of why. So today, let's say that you've got a settlement where multiple JCNs were settled as a result of that full and final settlement. We're going to still request that, we may request that EDI Shroy. We're going to send out that request for EDI Shroy letter. Many times we'll get that response back saying, this has been settled under another JCN. This is going to be that, the code that you would use to report this was actually paid under a different JCN. You must populate the jurisdiction claim number that's related to it when you file this. We'll also have the option for a no money settlement. So you file the Shroy PY, you're reporting to us, this was a full and final settlement, but there was no money paid out on it. And a decrease in indemnity option. Let's see here, and that's not related to the settlement process. That's just you're letting us know that the reduced benefit amount code decreased.
So like if a
For that
check was
code, yeah.
returned and you didn't actually pay the claimant, even though you previously reported to us that this money was paid to the claimant, but the check was returned, and so now when you report your next transaction to us, the amount reported as paid is gonna be less, that may flag. So now if you report to us a D, we would know, like, hey, this isn't an issue. They're intentionally reducing the amount paid to the claimant.
Right.
Okay, say,
Yes.
I'm sorry, say that again, a decrease in indemnity?
So one example of that is going to be a situation where, let's say you filed a quarterly with us and you reported to us that you paid the claimant $1,000, but the last check that you paid, that you sent to the claimant for $200 was returned. So when you file your suspension transaction with us, the amount paid to the claimant is no longer going to be $1,000. It's now going to be $800. So to tell us that that was intentional, you can use code D to tell us that there was a decrease in the indemnity paid to the claimant.
What about a full reclass of benefits? How are we gonna report that to you? Because you've taken away the R code.
So we don't take reclassifications today, and we don't plan on doing it in release 3.1. So it would work the same, but if we need to go back, we can go back and take a look at that and maybe put together a specific scenario around reclassifications, but that's just, it's not a code that we take.
You don't take it
yeah.
today, you accept it, but you don't take it.
We don't take it, right.
You just ignore it.
Yes.
I get that, but, how are we gonna transition those? If we have reported an R code in 3.0, how do we transition those in 3.1?
So it's just gonna be ignored again in 3.1. Yeah.
All right, so the next one is going to be for non-consecutive period code. The 3 codes that we're gonna accept for this one are waiting period, benefit period, and adjustment credit redistribution codes.
So again, this has to do to go along with what we would get, like with agreement forms, things of that nature. We would know that there was a broken period of disability being reported because you're back, showing us that you went back and paid the claimant their waiting period. That's what that's gonna be for.
All right, next. Some more are policy effective date, policy expiration date, first weekly amount and amount effective date, and then date claim admin new disability exceeded the waiting period. Any questions on those? Nope.
The gross is because of the CA that we are taking. In order to do the CA MTC, we need the gross information, so that's why those two are being added. Policy information is being added so that we can start using that information for coverage verification. And then as far as the date, the claim admin new disability exceeded the waiting period, that is, once again, goes along with us trying to make sure we have everything we need in the event that we move to using this for awards.
All right, and so these are all new 3.1 data amounts, so they come with that version. And we're gonna be accepting these. So, it's gonna be a number, a lot of these are number, or not, yeah, a lot are numbers. So we're looking at number of change data elements, number of narrative for claim, number of dependent payee relationships, number of cancel elements.
And that's more of a technical
Yeah.
thing, so for those of you who don't know the technical piece of it, when you file an EDI transaction, you can give us up to a certain number of occurrences of a piece of data, and the number of occurrences that you provide has to match this number field, and so that's just a technical piece of the transaction, but they are obviously new to us for 3.1.
Yes. We're also gonna start accepting dependent information. We didn't take all of them, so the only ones that we have are going to be dependent first and last name, and then dependent's date of birth. And again, that kind of goes along with what we talked about for the possibility of awards in the future. At least if we get this information now, we'll know like what we can do with it in our system well before that ever happens, if it happens. And then we've got employee email address. That's actually a new one, very new to the standard. And what that's gonna do is give you the ability to provide us with an email address for the claimant so that you have that means of communication with them. Part of body injured location code, permanent impairment body part location code, and part of body injured fingers/toes location code. Those for the award stuff too?
No, that's just a new thing with the standard in general, is to tell you if it's the left or right.
Oh, yes.
So that's just part of the new standard.
All right. I think it's continued. Oh, I have new codes.
I don't know, I can
that-
do it.
All
That's
right, go
fine.
for it.
So these are just our new codes that we're taking along with the new data elements. So for dependent payee relationship codes, we are adding in code 5, which is for brother and sister. Code 9 is for other. We don't take those today. We're adding them in for 3.1. And we're removing code 8, which is a jurisdiction fund or a state. That is not applicable to Virginia. We actually had somebody already reach out to us and say, well, what if we use that in release 3? We're not gonna be able to use it in release 3.1. I'm like, well, technically it's not applicable. We shouldn't have been accepting it in release 3. And we went back and looked, and there's only been like 36 claims, I think, total since 2008 that used this code incorrectly. So we're just gonna go back and clean up those 36 claims and then not take that code in release 3.1. Numerical birth order, this just goes along with the dependent information. We removed code 0 because that related to the jurisdiction fund, and then we added in the additional codes that are allowed in the release 3.1 standard. And then the employee gender codes in release 3.1, they added in T for self-reported transgender and X for non-binary. Those are new to the 3.1 standard in general. So as we are implementing 3.1, we are taking those as well. There is a new type of employee ID. So right now there are 5? There are 5 types of employee IDs that you can file today. The IIBC added in a 6th type, which is employee individual taxpayer identification number. We take all the other ones that are available in release 3, so we're gonna take all of them that are available in 3.1. So that's gonna be the other one that's added. Again, we do prefer SSN. If you have it, that's what we would prefer you to use, but we know that that's not always the case. So you have, this is another option that you have.
And all of our training aids to include, we've got a training aid that breaks that down specifically, that will be added to it when it comes time.
Yes. Okay, so we're gonna wrap up because we only have about 10 minutes left, so we'll just cover real quick what's next. So there is a proposed new DN. So Virginia submitted a request to the IIBC to ask for a new data element to be added to the 3.1 standard. And this is because we received feedback saying that we were using a code currently that's in release 3.0, we were using it incorrectly. And we've apparently been doing this since 2008, and we were just now told that we were doing it wrong. So in release 3.1, if we chose not to use that code anymore in the manner in which we have been, we needed something else to use, and there wasn't something available. So we put out what they call an IRR to request that there be a new data element, and it's going to be called the date the claim administrator decided to deny the claim. So this is the date that you actually made the decision that you were denying the claim. That is going to be required, and that will tell you when you are required to file that. You have 10 days from the date you made the decision to file your 04 with us. So that's going to be a new data element that's going to be required in 3.1. If it gets approved. It's currently out for vote at the IRR, at the IIBC. And so if that IRR gets approved, then this is going to be implemented. We're just waiting for it to be approved. And we're hoping it's approved. We're going to be doing training, company specific. Again, if you're local to Richmond, we're happy to do it in person. We can do webinars. We can do anything that you guys need us to do to help you get prepared for release 3.1. We are going to offer all claim admin, so basically just broad general training that will be webinar, so you guys can come and have all of your staff participate and hear what other questions they have from other companies as well. Testing is coming in 2024. There's going to be a testing plan that's going to be communicated out to everybody. You are required to go through and pass your testing before you can begin submitting in 3.1. If you use a vendor, your vendor is going to be the one doing the testing, and only your vendor has to do the testing. The majority of our trading partners use a vendor, and so those vendors will just have to test that one time, not per trading partner. Nice.
She's very excited.
I see that.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
We do like to test our vendors,
Okay,
or our one vendor.
I understand.
Is it okay that a claim administrator send test data?
You would send it through your vendor, so that shouldn't be an issue. Yep. And then, of course, we're going to be updating all of our documentation. So all of our training aids that we have available on the website, and I know somebody was interested in seeing that, so I'm going to pull that up. All of those are going to be updated. We are going to be posting some trainings. This particular session today is being recorded because we have a lot of individuals that were unable to attend. So it's being recorded. It's going to be published out there for anybody who needs to see it. We're going to be doing as much training as we can and providing that out there to you guys, updating all of our documentation, and then our go live January 16th, 2025. So we are excited. It's going to be here before you know it. We've been working on all of our stuff for over a year and a half now. So we'll be excited when 2025 comes. Maybe. I tell Candace all the time I'm not going to be here
Yes, you are.
when we switch. I'm leaving.
I know where you live.
All right, so let me pull up the website. Okay, so this is the commission's website. And if you scroll down on the left-hand side, you click on the EDI, Quality Assurance Department. Over here on the right is where you'll see all of our documentation. So up at the top, this is the 3.0 implementation guide. This is 3.1 implementation guide. I'm gonna go ahead and pull it up.
Yeah, I was
So
about to
right
say.
now, this is all what we have published. This is our current version 1 of our tables. There is gonna be another version coming out shortly that we had some feedback and some things that we had to make some changes on. So that's gonna be coming out soon. I think we just have to finalize a couple things. So probably the next couple weeks, you'll get an email saying the next version is available. This sequencing table is new for release 3.1. It's something our vendor has done for other jurisdictions, and they asked if they could do it for Virginia as well. And basically, this is just going to show you what edits we have implemented for sequencing so that you guys can put those in as well, or so that you can train your teams accordingly.
Stephanie, who's your vendor?
ISO. Or VERS, whatever they go by today. Yes. And then, and on that 3.1 page is where we're gonna start publishing additional information for you guys. And then, here are all of our training aids. It's quite an extensive list. If you click on the first one, it's a packet, so that will download a PDF document of all of our training aids, so you can have one packet of documentation, and then each one is broken out individually below. So all of these are going to be updated so that they match for the 3.1 requirements, and then if we need to add new ones, we will do so. So that's there for,
And as they get added, they fall to the bottom of the list.
yes, so these are in order of how we've created them. And then if you are not currently on our distribution list, this is where you would sign up. Every company, when you submit your trading partner documents to us, you list your business and your technical contact. They are automatically added to the distribution list, and we double check periodically to make sure they did not remove themselves off the list, because that happens. And we want to make sure that they receive our communications. But if there's anybody else from your organization that you want to receive our updates, they can just go on here, enter their information, and then they'll be added. And then lastly, the only thing that I would like to say is that we would appreciate feedback. So I think you've mentioned you've already transitioned for other jurisdictions from release 3 to 3.1. So if you have any feedback for us on how that
I
went,
already gave it to you.
you did? Okay,
Yeah.
great. If anybody else has any feedback on things that they didn't like, things that went well, please provide that to us. If you
Yeah.
review our tables and you have any questions or concerns about anything we put in there, I encourage you to let us know that sooner rather than later, so we have enough time to make some changes. We want to make sure that any changes that we make to our implementation guide have been communicated out in a timely manner to our customers, so that they then have time to make those changes within their system. I have my business cards with me today if anybody needs one of them, so you can have my contact information. But you can also email our EDI support team, and that will get forwarded over to.
And that's on there
probably-
too.
It is.
Yeah. Scroll
It'll get
down.
emailed over to myself as well as to Ryan. Ryan Duke is the
Oh, yeah,
EDI
there it
assistant
is.
manager. So here's our department's email address right here. You can email any questions that you have to them or to me directly, and we'll be happy to get back with you as soon as possible and provide you feedback.
One question on the TPP.
Yes.
Is your element requirement tables has changed from and I know you're not taking DN 14, the postal, claim advent postal code.
Right.
It's changed from physical to mailing, or mailing to physical. When do you expect the new TPPs
For 3.1,
for 3.1?
that's a good question. I don't know. Can you write that down?
And you want to know too, on all the
I would,
legacy claims that we've reported your.
I would probably say no, because we don't use that information. Like, we don't use it internally. I would have to check to see if our vendor needs it for their purposes, because they use that to verify, to make sure that the right sender is submitted on the correct JCN. So we will double check on that and let you know. I don't know the answer to that right this second.
Okay.
But we'll definitely look into that for you. And I didn't even, and to be honest with you, I didn't even think about the new form, so that, thank you for bringing that.
Well, I kind of was thinking the same typo, because it is a radio button. They need it to go from mailing to physical? Could tell me?
Maybe not, so we need to look at that.
Yeah,
We'll look at that.
yeah,
Okay. It could have been just been a mistake.
yeah. I don't know.
I would love it if it was a mistake.
Okay.
Yeah,
If it means that you guys have to follow twos, I would love it if it was a mistake too, so that we don't have to get all of those in.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we'll definitely look into that for sure.
Okay.
And if it was a mistake, we'll make sure that it's corrected before we publish any of our updated
Yeah.
information. Any other questions? Well, thank you guys. We appreciate you taking the time to take part in our session today. And if you have any questions going forward, please feel free to let us know. Thank you.
oh no, stop that. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you.